It begins with a name that has become synonymous with a nightmare, a borderland between the living and the lost. In the heart of Appalachia, the roads don't just lead to towns. They lead into the heavy, suffocating silence of the mountains. The static isn't just interference, it is the sound of a history trying to scream through the cracks of a forgotten frequency. We look down upon these valleys and see the scars of industry, where the earth was hollowed out and something else moved in. To stand at the edge of the mist is to realize that the geography of the mind is just as treacherous as the terrain. Every map of this region contains blank spaces, places where the law of man ends and the folklore of the hills begins. The church was never just a building. It was a fortress against a world they believed was already condemned to the fire. Light in these woods is a fragile thing, a flickering spark against a darkness that feels ancient and sentient.
We cannot turn
The preacher
back.
spoke of a new
The
God,
shadows
one
will
born from the
reveal
suffering
all.
of the hollows and the isolation of the holler. They took the serpent as a sign, a literal manifestation of the poison they believed inhabited every human soul. Community in these hills was forged in secret, a circle of believers who saw the outside world as a shifting, demonic haze. The medicine of the mountains was often indistinguishable from the rituals of the occult, preserving the old ways in brine and shadow. The peeling layers of the past reveal a rot that wasn't just in the wood, but in the very foundation of their faith. A mark carved in cedar tells of a presence that predates the pioneers, a sigil used to bind the land to a darker purpose. Below the surface, the coal fires have been burning for decades, a literal hell fueled by the town's own discarded riches. Innocence was the first thing to be abandoned when the air turned to ash and the sirens began to wail. The ritual of the creek wasn't for cleansing. It was an initiation into a history written in cold, moving water. A family's legacy is often a weight, a portrait of faces hardened by a struggle that the rest of the world ignored. The eyes of the faithful don't see the flames as destruction, but as the only way to see the truth clearly. There are figures in the periphery of Appalachian lore that have no names, only functions in the theater of dread. The mines were the arteries of the town, and when they stopped pumping coal, they began to bleed black despair. Judgment in these communities was swift and visceral, carried out in the damp privacy of the cellar. The signs were everywhere for those who knew how to read the decay, warnings of a reckoning that was long overdue. Childhood in a dying town is a ghost story in the making, a collection of broken things and silenced voices. We walk among the dead to understand the living, searching for the moment the prayers turn into demands. The names on the stones fade, but the energy of the trauma remains trapped under the moss and the mountain soil. To be trapped is not just to be behind bars, but to be unable to recognize the face in the window as your own. The asylum was the final destination for those whose visions were too close to the reality the town tried to hide. A single step can be the difference between a path home and a descent into a labyrinth of memory. The walls are stained with the frantic script of the desperate, a final testament to a faith that went horribly wrong. The rhythm of the hills is a broken record, repeating the same tragedies across generations. The shadow of the executioner is a reflection of the town's collective guilt, a shape given form by their hidden sins. They marched through the fields not to harvest, but to ensure that nothing pure would ever grow again. Nature here is cruel and resourceful, weaving the remnants of human life into its own twisted architecture. The act of burial is often a desperate attempt to keep the past from rising back to the surface. The town's identity has been eroded by time and fog, leaving only a skeletal reminder of what it once claimed to be. The transformation of the world into metal and rust is the visual language of a soul that has been cauterized. Age in the hills brings a different kind of sight, a vision that looks backward into the abyss. The end of the world doesn't come with a bang, but with a slow rotation toward the inevitable.
Is anyone there?
The missing are never truly gone. They become part of the atmosphere, a presence felt in every draft. The water reflects a sky that no longer exists, a dark mirror for a town that has lost its soul. The sound of the siren is the heartbeat of the nightmare, a call to prayer for a god of rust and bone. The body is just a vessel for the twitching anxieties of a community that has lost its way. The body is just a vessel for the twitching anxieties of a community that has lost its way. Feathers fall like snow in a room where the laws of physics have been replaced by the laws of the spirit. Even the insects carry the mark of the transition, symbols of a metamorphosis that leads only to decay. The neon light is a false promise of sanctuary, a flickering beacon in a sea of encroaching darkness. The mirror is a doorway to the other side of the self, where the secrets are no longer hidden by skin. The walk into the unknown is paved with the blood of those who thought they could outrun their history. The bridge is out, and the only way forward is to step into the white void of the collective unconscious. The machine writes the truth, even when the hand is too tired to hold the pen, a permanent record of the panic. The masks were worn to survive the atmosphere, but eventually they became the only faces they had left. The word is spoken in a breath of smoke, an ancient command that ripples through the fog. The word is spoken in a breath of smoke, an ancient command that ripples through the fog. The bus sits as a monument to a generation that was taken by the mountain and never returned. The lesson learned in the dark is that guilt is the only thing that never truly fades. The ash is the only memory left of the hearth, a cold gray blanket over a warm heart. The vertical descent into the earth is the only way to reach the source of the town's original sin. The shadow of the cross is a heavy burden, a geometry of faith that pins the spirit to the dirt. The diner is a tomb of small-town dreams, boarded up to keep the ghosts from ordering a final meal. The connection to the outside world has been severed, leaving only the sound of a swinging, empty line. Fire is the ultimate purifier, the final solution for a town that could not be saved any other way. The crown of antlers is a symbol of a wild, unrefined divinity that demands a price in blood. The fan turns like the wheel of fate, cooling the fires of an industry that built its own funeral pyre. To look into the fog is to look for a reflection that will never be returned. The doll is a surrogate for the suffering, a vessel for the pain that was too much for a child to bear. The chimney is a finger pointing at a heaven that has turned its back on the valley. The home is no longer a sanctuary, but a shrine to the obsessions that destroyed the family. The key turns in a lock that has been fused shut by the heat of 1,000 regrets. The light at the end of the tunnel is a predatory thing, drawing the lost deeper into the maze. The flesh is a canvas for the cult's ideology, a permanent reminder of who they belong to. The motion of the wind is the only thing that remains of the laughter that once filled the park. Death is a quiet observer on the windowsill, waiting for the last of the life to drain from the room. The eye of the storm is a witness to the final transformation of the Appalachian landscape. The lantern is a small, defiant light against a darkness that has already won the battle. The headlines are the only objective truth left, a cold record of a tragedy that became a myth. The sink overflows with the accumulated filth of a town that tried to wash away its sins. The law has no power here, its authority tarnished and abandoned in the face of the supernatural. The moth is drawn to the heat, a tiny pilgrim on a journey toward its own destruction. The altar is the center of the world, the place where the real and the imagined finally collide. Two survivors stand in the ruins, breathing the air of a world that has been completely redefined. The child's vision is the blueprint for the nightmare, a map of monsters drawn in crayon and fear. The hand from the dark is a reminder that you are never truly alone in the house of the hills. The hallway is a transition between the physical world and the architecture of the damned. The static on the screen is the only window left to a reality that has moved on without them. The coal is the black blood of the earth, and it demands a sacrifice for every ounce taken. The pews are empty because the congregation has moved into the streets to wait for the fire. The compass is useless in a place where the cardinal directions are governed by trauma. The cave is the womb of the mountain, where the new god is waiting to be born into the light. The earth is opening up to swallow the evidence of a century of spiritual corruption. The heart is the ultimate relic, preserved in the sweetness of a faith that has turned lethal. The sunset is not the end of the day, but the beginning of the eternal night of the order. The stain on the hands is a mark of the creative act of destruction that defined the town. Even in the ash, something survives, a pale reminder of the beauty that was sacrificed. The photograph is the last thing to go, the final severance of the ties to the world that was. We walk into the mist because the truth is hidden in the places where we can no longer see. Silent Hill is not a place on a map. It is the history of the hills waiting for the next traveler to arrive.